Today I just want to take a second to talk about gun laws. Why? Because I'm getting tired of arguing about it in the comment section, so I figured it'd just be easier to make a video and just leave a link instead. Save me a lot of time anyway. Now, in terms of who I'm talking to, it's going to be mostly foreigners that have really odd ideas of what our laws are, or they're just confused what our laws are. Or we have Americans that also are sometimes confused about the state of our laws. But mostly I'm talking to the foreign audiences here. I'm going to do this in a few sections. It's all going to be one video, but it's going to be a few sections. First, I'm going to talk about the difference between federal laws, state laws, and then give an overview of the federal ones, and then some of the more common state laws. And then I'll just basically walk you through the process, of how things work, practically speaking. All right, first I'll talk about the difference, like I said, between the federal laws and the state. Well, you have to remember that the U.S. isn't a monolithic thing. Gun laws are going to vary depending on where in the country you are exactly. There's federal laws which apply to everyone, no matter where you are in the country. And then each state has its own set of laws. They can be as stricter or less strict than the federal laws, but if they're less, obviously the federal's going to supersede. Then beyond state, you also have local laws. You have county, city, township, all that stuff. That's going to fall in the category of local. All right, now as far as state laws are concerned, as I said, it varies depending on what state you're in. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time covering state laws. I will, like I said, I'll cover some of the more common ones later in this video. But what I will talk about for a second is preemption. So remember I talked about all those local level laws. Well, if you wanted to travel around the state, you'd have a problem because you're running into a different law every time you cross a county line, every time you cross, into the next town over. You can walk into a completely different set of laws. So what most states have done is pass preemption laws. What a preemption law does is it basically says that any law that's stricter than the state law is non-enforceable or null and void. Because they don't want to create that patchwork of laws. They want you to stay compliant. Kind of an important thing. Otherwise, trip planning would be, it'd be a chore, put it that way. And if you make a mistake, you end up in a jail cell. You don't want that. So they created the preemption laws. Unfortunately, not all states have preemption laws. Most of them do. The vast majority of them do. It's very rare you're going to run into a state that doesn't have it. Say for, I'll call them the usual suspects. They won't. And then, some are better than others as far as, how well the preemption law works. But the main point you need to know is that most states do preempt, so you don't need to worry quite so much about the local level laws. It's mostly the state and federal ones you're going to be dealing with. I said, research the laws of the state that you're looking at, because they're all a little bit different. Now, as far as federal laws are concerned, there's only a few big ones that you need to be concerned with. The first is the 1934 National Firearms Act, NFA for short. Now the NFA, what that does is it regulates machine guns, short-barreled rifles, which is defined as anything with a barrel less than 16 inches, or an overall length of less than 26 inches, and short-barreled shotguns, which is an 18-inch barrel on those. And destructive devices, which is kind of a catch-all category. Basically anything, non-sporting, which has a bore over 50 caliber, which would technically be most shotguns, but they exempt most of those. It seems to be arbitrary which ones they allow, which ones they don't. Anything explosive, missiles, bombs, mines, that kind of thing would all technically fall into the destructive device category. You're not going to find those, practically speaking, but there is a provision in the law for them. And the last category is any other weapon. That's anything that's not a machine gun, a short-barreled rifle, a short-barreled shotgun, destructive device, or standard rifle, pistol, or shotgun. It's going to be mostly novelty stuff. Now, what the NFA actually does is it requires a more extensive background check to get those, and a bunch of local law enforcement sign-offs, fingerprints, passport photographs, a whole slew of paperwork mess that takes about a year to process. There's also a $200 tax that you have to pay for all but any other weapons. Any other weapons are only a $5 tax, but the actual paperwork process is identical across the board for those. I won't spend too much more time talking about that, except to mention that in 1986 they banned new registrations of machine guns, May of 1986 to be specific, which means that the existing ones have gone up exponentially in price, to the point where only the very rich, or at least the very comfortably middle class, could ever hope to afford one. The cheapest you can find is right around $4,000 or $5,000, and it continues to go up. The average is probably about 20 to 30,000 for most stuff. So practically speaking, you're not going to find machine guns on the market legally. People have this misconception that they're a common thing. If it looks like one, it must be one. No, it's not. There's a huge difference between semi-auto and auto. You're not going to get anything but the semi-autos. So that's the NFA in a nutshell. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details on a lot of this. This is just a quick and dirty overview. If you want more details, post in the comment section. I might make another video just to clarify things for you, or just do your research on your own. This is just to give you a general idea of what the laws are, so I'm going to go over them pretty quick. Alright, the next one you need to be aware of is the 1968 Gun Control Act, also called the GCA. The big points with the GCA is you can't mail order anything anymore. You used to be able to, if you saw something you wanted, you could order it right out of the catalog. It would come to your door. You never had to step foot in a dealer. What that changed was that now you do need to go to the dealer and go through that process, which just adds cost and complexity. Like, let's say you did want something that you saw advertised online or in a catalog. Well, you'd have to find a transfer dealer. You'd have to pay the dealer their transfer fee, which varies wildly from dealer to dealer. Generally, you're looking at somewhere between $25 and $100. That's added on top of the cost of the gun you want, on top of the shipping. So really, all that does is it adds cost and complexity to the process. It doesn't really need to be there. The other thing the GCA did was it required serial numbers on at least commercially produced guns. You could still make one yourself if you wanted to, which wouldn't need the serial, but everything else needs to be serialized. Not a bad idea, just for theft prevention to have a serial on there anyway, but you didn't need to have it before. That's the other thing the GCA does. Don't need to spend too much more time talking about the GCA. The next up would be the Brady Bill. The Brady Bill created the lovely paperwork we have to do now, the 4473, which is really just a backdoor registration. They swear up and down it's not what it is. This is exactly what it is. This is a backdoor registration. Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much more time on that one either. Then there's an expired one I'll give lip service to, which is the assault weapons ban of 1994. Basically, that attempted to regulate semi-autos, did it based on meaningless cosmetic features. It was a crap law written by people who do not know what they're legislating. Really ban, bayonet lugs, flash suppressors, uh, threaded barrels, adjustable stocks. Nothing that actually, you know, has an effect on function. So it expiring changed exactly nothing. Uh, Not much more needs to be said about it. It's no longer law, so it's just irrelevant. Now, I'll spend a second talking about some of the more common state laws that you might or might not run into. The big ones there that are worth mentioning are registrations. Some states will require registrations, some won't. Most do not, thankfully. The ones that do, it varies depending on what, as far as what they want registered. Some just do pistols. Others do long guns. Others register by class. It's across the board. There's really no consistency there. But like I said, most don't, thankfully. But it is something you might run into, especially in the more left-leaning states. You're likely to run into that. And the registration has nothing to do with controlling crime. It's about eventual confiscations. Your registrations historically always lead to confiscations. That's the whole point. You can argue otherwise, but you'd be wrong. But I'm not making an argument video here. I'm just doing a rundown, so I'll shut up about that. The other one that people have questions about is the concealed carry laws. Well, most states, actually all states now, do allow some form of concealed carry. The reason I said most first was that some, not really. They allow it technically. There's a law in the books, but in practice, you have to know someone. You have to, pay the right bribes. Be famous. Be a politician. We were looking at most of the populated parts of California, for instance, are like that. New York, for a large extent, is like that. Most states, thankfully, are not like that, but there's a few, usual suspects. When I say usual suspects, I'm talking about, top of my head, California, New York, Illinois, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Delaware, Long Island, Maryland, Hawaii, Washington, D.C. I don't think I forgot anybody. But those are the ones that you're going to run into the most problems with. Not just with this issue, but with others too. I call those areas behind enemy lines, frankly. Now, as far as what you can carry, that does vary quite a bit. Some states will limit you to just carrying pistols. Others will be all weapons you can carry. Some are pistols and certain weapons. Some require different things depending on the state that you're talking about. In general, you're talking about a pistol and then maybe a knife or a spray or something like that. That's what most people are going to carry. It's going to vary by what state you're in. But that's it for most. Now then there's a question of open carry or concealed carry. That's as far as whether or not to do that. That's preference. You can make a really strong argument either way. Concealed carry, you have the element of surprise, and you're keeping a lower profile. a lot of people really like that. They don't want to be noticed. Um, and then open carry takes the exact opposite approach. You want to be noticed because you want to have a deterrent effect. The best fight is one that you don't have to fight to begin with. If they go on to someone else because you're armed, great. Your pistol did its job. You didn't even have to draw it. And you even have a faster draw to boot. The downside, of course, is you're a lot more noticeable. People like to argue, well, maybe you'll be a target. There's not really much evidence to support that. Mostly it's just, what you're comfortable with. Now, as far as the law is concerned, most states will allow that. Most, not all. Then if they do allow it, it's going to vary again. Some will require you to have the concealed carry license. Others don't. And then there's lists of places that you can carry, both concealed or open. It varies from state to state. And then, where you can carry is between concealed and open are sometimes different. In some states, like Michigan, for example, is where I am right now, if you have the concealed carry license and you open carry, you actually can carry more places than you could otherwise. So there's actually some legal advantage to that. But like I said, this is something that varies wildly from state to state. Whereas what you can carry, where you can carry it, you have to do your research there. Now, as far as the process goes, say you wanted to go into the store and buy your gun. What you'd have to get, again, this does vary a little bit by state, but as far as the federal law is concerned, you walk in, you select the model you want, then you're going to fill out form 4473. So I think so. Used to be a one-page format. I think now the signatures are on a separate page. It's been a while since I've filled one out. A lot of places actually have a digital version of that now, so you actually don't have the physical paperwork at all. Basically, you just put in your personal information. Like I said, it's more of a backdoor registry than it is a actual background check. But you put your information in there. Then the dealer put in, what you're buying, what the serial is. Again, it's a backdoor, but and then you answer some basic questions, and then they call it in, and it takes about 30 seconds to process. Then you pay, and you're out. Basically, as long as you're not a felon, as long as you don't have any domestic violence charges, you're not a drug addict, you've never been, adjudicated insane, you're a legal citizen, you're good, But again, the process can vary slightly depending on what state you're in. But that's the federal process. I'll give you an example of how things vary from state to state. I'll talk briefly about Michigan's process for various things, because that's where I am. It's just the state laws that I'm familiar with. In Michigan, if you have the CPL already, and I'll talk about the application for that briefly in a second, but if you have that, then that acts as a NICS override. You still have to fill out the form, but they don't actually have to call it in, which saves a little bit of time and hassle, because if you're occasionally the system will back up. It doesn't happen often, but if it does, you could end up waiting, a few minutes to, a few days for them to run that 30-second check on you. Which basically all that is they're checking you for wants and warrants, and anything that might be in your federal record. It's all computerized. It really doesn't take much time at all. Just a data entry thing. But you can skip that if you have the CPL, at least in Michigan. We do have a pistol registry, unfortunately. They did streamline that a little bit a few years ago. Now, if you have the CPL, you fill out Form RI-60 on your own, and you just mail it in. Relatively painless process. Doesn't cost anything, thankfully. In the old days, you'd have to, fill out the form just like, the non-license holders, which still exists, of course. There's not supposed to be a fee for that, but certain departments are known to charge for it. Well, once you get that one, though, again, it's a mail-in. Used to be you'd have to physically go in for a safety inspection. You don't have to do that anymore. It was an odd process. This is about the only state that did that, and it was a carryover from the Jim Crow era, because the way it actually worked when they started doing that process is if you went in and you were white, congratulations, your pistol's safe. You can register it. If you were black, no pistol for you. That's the way it worked. That's the way the law was. That's why the law was passed. They got rid of it, thankfully. So now it's just you mail it in. Now, as far as the concealed carry license, again, this is Michigan's law. You need to take an 8-hour class. Then you need to pay the application fee, which is $105 last I checked. Of course, there's also going to be a fee for the class. Anywhere between about $75 and $150 is the going rate. Usually closer to the $150 end. I know I taught them for quite a while. I still could, but I haven't really had time. Once you have that done and you have your paperwork filled out, you have your money ready to go, you'll need to get a passport-sized photograph taken. You'll need to go into the county sheriff's office and get some fingerprints done. Then that gets processed. How long varies in the county. It's usually between a week and a month. That's how long it takes. And then it's good for 5 years. Then you can carry a pistol, just about any knife you want. For Michigan, the only thing you can't have now is a double-edged. Used to be you couldn't have an automatic, but we just changed that. It's for the better. Now you can, but you still can't have a double-edged. It doesn't make much sense. I mean, not a lot of people carry double-edged knives anyway, but why not? You can also carry a taser if you want one. In fact, you have to have a CPL in order to get a taser. Personally, I don't like them, but you can have one if you wanted one. Pepper spray, basically anything you want to carry for defense, you can carry. You can carry openly or concealed. You do not need a license to carry openly, although the list of where you can't carry is pretty restrictive without the license. It's much less so with. They said you can, if you combine the two, you can open carry with the license. At least in Michigan, you pretty much carry wherever you want, except for federal property, prisons, things like that. Most everywhere else, though, is going to be good. If you just carry concealed, there is a list of prohibited places. It's not quite as bad as open carry without a license, but there is an annoying list of no carry zones. We call victim disarmament zones. Is what they really are. You're not safer disarmed. You're more at risk. But explain that to the legislature. That's basically how things work in Michigan. Now, this is one example. There's 49 more. I don't know the laws of every single state. This kind of varies. It's something you have to look up. Anyway, this is by no means exhaustive. This is very quick, very dirty. If you want to know more about the way the gun laws work, like I said, ask me in the comments section. I'll be happy to explain it more. If I need to, I'll make a follow-up video. Or just, look at the laws yourself. Consult a lawyer if you're really worried about it. That's the quick and dirty. That's the way our laws work. Now, again, this video isn't debating on, well, not too much anyway, about what the laws should be, or how stupid some of them are, in terms of being overly restrictive, which is something a lot of people outside the country don't really get. But whatever. I might make another video about that. This is just an overview of the laws in general. And I hope you learned something. You got some of your more broad questions answered. You maybe know a little bit more than you did before. Yes, that's it. Please like and subscribe. Drop by my Patreon if you like. I don't get paid for this ever since the YouTube changed their ad policy. And I don't want to get into that. Okay, that's all.